Hello everyone, Venris here. Very quick video today. I'm joking, of course, because this video is almost 1 hour long, more than 1 hour long, because it contains only the major changes to the Great Plan update. The videos were prepared by Nathan from the Great Book of Cruises channel, so giant kudos to him. If you want more deep dive into those changes, you can see his videos. That links you will find in the video description, and in the description you will also find the changelog for the fall update. Enjoy the video.
All Lizardmen legendary lords will benefit from a new currency known as alignment. Now, as you can see on screen, there are various different ways of gaining alignment, and some of it is actually tied specifically to individual legendary lords. This is not only for acquisition, but also in the use of said currency. This is not a currency that you can easily hoard, and it will take a while to start gaining it, but eventually you will start to see it more often. The ways of acquiring it will obviously vary, as you can see here. Kroq-Gar and Tiktaq'to acquire it mostly through battles, Tehenhauin will acquire it through sacrifices, and Mazdamundi will acquire it through the use of Slan. And then what you use it for can also vary. Yes, blessed spawnings will be usable by everyone, but in regards to character skills, star readings, buildings, technologies, and so on, it all does vary on the specific legendary lord that you're using. We'll be going into much more detail regarding the specifics of alignments as we start looking towards each of the legendary lords. With that being said, there is a generic use of alignments for all the legendary lords, which is to boost up your blessed spawned units. This is very much the same way as unit upgrades, but only for your blessed spawnings, meaning that you won't be able to boost up any generic Saurus, Bastillodons, and so on. Each of the legendary lords will have their own special unit upgrades for these blessed spawnings. For example, as you can see on screen, Mazdamundi focuses around magic resistance in most cases. Everything which is added in for each of the individual lords will be thematic to their own specific lore and playstyle within the Great Plan patch. The Lizardmen have received a radical change when it comes to their technology tab. As you can see, it is completely different to how it used to be in vanilla, as now it is divided into its own specific subsections, and the prerequisite buildings are focused around the end of each branch rather than at the beginning. Now, with this change, it should be much easier for the player to decide what type of bonuses they want to focus on. If they want to focus on skinks and reducing their upkeep and making them much stronger, or focusing around stuff of more administrative type of bonuses, such as looting settlements or maybe even boosting up your own settlements. What you will notice is that each of the final texts of each respective branch will generate a new resource known as Old One's Favor. This is the only way you'll be able to actually get Old One's Favor, meaning that you will be able to get a decent amount per turn as you progress your way through each of the branches. The Favor resource itself is gained from technology and also used in other technology too. There is a max of 50 Old One's Favor that you can have at any given time, and that is used on a completely separate 2 branches, which is focused around very powerful technology for the race. This is very much endgame tech, which will give a large variety of different style of bonuses. The actual price does vary as you progress your way down the branches, costing more and more Old One's Favor, meaning that you won't be able to get this too early on, barring possibly the first 2 as they only cost 5, but the intention here is to provide with loads of bonuses near the mid to late campaign, as all the other factions will have their own bonuses working against you. You need to level up and be balanced against them. Lizardmen edicts have also been updated to be much more powerful, as the vanilla variant was, well, a little bit weak. Now you'll be able to get a large variety of bonuses, and some stuff is also for your whole faction, own armies faction-wide, or different other bonuses. The fact is, now they are much more worth it, and there is more incentive to actually build up your geomantic web. There are some powerful bonuses, like for example cooldown reduction for all spells and all characters, and that can then be stacked up and gotten a lot stronger, especially as you start powering up the geomantic web itself, or even increasing the physical resistance of the Slann for all armies faction wide, meaning that you can have them as pure tanky characters if you so wish. It very much depends on the Slann too. You can see that the bonuses at alignment level 5 is just so much more stronger that you should be more incentivized to actually link up all your settlements. This is something that a lot of players don't tend to do because, well, in vanilla there was really no big benefit there. As a quick note, the one that gives you 30% plus research rate is incredibly useful, trust me on this. Lizardmen rights have also been quite upgraded. As you can see here with the Rite of Primeval Glory, not only will you be able to summon in your typical feral army, but you have a lot of bonuses towards your weapon strength for all of your beast units, making them much more useful in the battlefield, not only for the one that you've summoned in, but pretty much every army that you may have. The Rite of Ferocity is also quite different now, focusing on melee defense when in your own or friendly territory, research rate plus 50%, leadership plus 10 when in own or allied territory, and casualty replenishment plus 10% when in your own territories. This only lasts for 5 turns, but 50% research rate is incredibly useful, especially if you've already started using any other edicts which can increase research rate too. This is when you should go back and start thinking about the technology tab that we recently spoke about. The Slann have by far gotten the biggest change in terms of generic changes, as now you can see the cooldown is once every 40 turns. Trust me, there's a good reason for this. All spells that a Slann is able to learn can be found in one branch. Not only that, but they already start with the first spell available in their specific lore, completely unlocked and upgraded to its highest point. So that means that as you level up, you can focus on what spells you actually want, and you won't have to spend, say for example, 4 skill points to then move to another specific point of the spell lore. This means that if you want the endgame spells very early on, you are able to do so. This has been done because the Slann themselves are ancient and are one of the most powerful spellcasters in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, so it makes sense for them to have no prerequisites to learn the spells that they wish to use. Now let's take the time to look over the trait of a 5th generation Slann. Magic item drop chance plus 5% for all characters, miscast base chance minus 10%, speed plus 33%, charge bonus plus 10% for all characters, movement range in campaign by 25%, and vigor loss reduction minus 10% for Lord's Army, with the ability of Bolt of the Old Ones, which is a spell that you can use and it does a decent amount of damage. Keep in mind that this is just for a 5th generation Slann, one of the weakest generations. And now let's take the time to look at the trait for a 2nd generation Slann. Miscast base chance minus 10% for own characters in a province, campaign movement range plus 5% for own armies faction wide, Winds of Magic power reserve plus 5 for own armies faction wide, Winds of Magic power reserve for the Slann himself plus 20, physical resistance plus 10% for Lord's Army, ward save plus 10%, growth plus 10 for all provinces, horde growth plus 1 for own armies faction wide, this is obviously for Nakai the Wanderer, construction time minus 50% for all buildings in local province, and finally Bolt of the Old Ones. The Slann have had their power level increased quite a bit. The idea is to make them as powerful as they should be represented in lore, and all these bonuses do tend to do so, where even the younger generations are very powerful. Let's start off with Kroq-Gar's faction trait, Last Defender of Hotel, which has the following benefits. Feral Cold One, Salamander, Razordon Hunting Packs, Bastillodon, Stegodon, Feral Carnosaur, Ancient Salamander, and Dread Saurians have increased charge and mobility above 75%. Enables lightning strike battles when reinforcements are present, recruitment cost minus 25% for all units, and double experience gain for units when fighting against chaos. You can also see the buff that all of the monsters will have when in regards to increased charge and mobility. It's quite a decent buff, and obviously this favors a lot of monster-heavy armies, so if you want to go with big lizards, this is the perfect time. Kroq-Gar's own unique trait, Last Defender, has the following benefits: upkeep minus 25% for Saurus and Cold One units for Lord's Army, ambush success chance plus 25% for Lord's Army, and finally leadership plus 5 for Lord's Army. He will also start off with a trait known as Ancient Spawn, which increases armor plus 10 and leadership plus 10 for Feral Cold Ones, Pterodon Riders, Ripidactyl Riders, Salamander, Razordon Hunting Packs, Bastillodons, Stegodons, Feral Carnosaurs, Ancient Salamanders, and Dread Saurians within his army. Kroq-Gar now has heavy bonuses for Saurus units and monsters, so you're able to switch around or dedicate yourself to any as you wish. Like the other Lizardmen legendary lords, Kroq-Gar can use the new alignment currency to upgrade units. However, the other lords may only be able to use this on blessed spawning units, whereas Kroq-Gar may also be able to upgrade those monsters which are not blessed spawnings. Keep in mind that this would be for feral monsters and not for anything that has a rider on top. So as you can see here, the Stegodon and the Cold Ones are able to be upgraded, but the Cold One Knights are not able to. This works out as you'll be able to get quite a lot of monsters early on, and you'll be able to upgrade them to make them a tad stronger. Kroq-Gar earns alignment through Geomantic Web and events, but his main source is through battles. An aggressive form of playstyle is always recommended here, as obviously you will need alignment for a few specific bonuses, and well, it's Total War, so yeah, if you're not going to be aggressive, then why are you playing Kroq-Gar? The rate at which you gain alignment is completely up to you, and perhaps Kroq-Gar has the easiest one, as you can keep throwing yourself into battle after battle to be able to gain as much as you need, and trust me, you will be needing it for a certain mechanic. That in itself is for the Vengeance of Oxyotl, which allows you to take on missions fulfilling ancient rituals or revenge, and it requires 50 alignment to activate each time. This in itself is a new quest system, which is actually quite interesting. It follows around a basic quest system which you can see on screen right now. The one that's just become active for me requires for me to capture 750 battle captives. As a reward, you'll get 5,000 of your income, but also some very powerful crafted weapons. This one, for example, the Spear Haunchi, provides the following benefits: missile strength plus 20%, weapon strength plus 20%, income from sacking settlements plus 5% faction-wide, income from post-battle loot 5% faction-wide, and melee and missile weapon damage plus 1% for blessed units in own armies faction-wide. Like I said, those items are very powerful, and the great thing about them is that there's a decent amount of them that you can acquire from these quests. So it's obviously to your best interest to go and gain as many of these items as possible, as all those faction-wide bonuses do stack, and you can have these items on multiple characters. Let's use another example here with the Crown of the Berserker, which will only require you to kill 3,000 enemies. You'll gain 5,000 to your treasury, and obviously then the Crown. The Crown itself has the following effects: miscast base chance plus 50%, so obviously keep this with a melee lord, speed plus 10%, ability potional foolhardiness, passive ability Frenzy, and finally melee and missile weapon damage plus 1% for blessed units, own armies faction-wide. As you can tell, there's a lot of different bonuses and you can get some negatives too. However, obviously the item itself is very powerful and it doesn't take up a weapon slot, so you're going to be able to get items from all the different slots. Just one final more example. So in this mission you have to kill another 3,000 enemies, you'll get 5,000 to your treasury, and also get Quetzal's Vambraces, which gives the following benefits: armor plus 5, melee defense plus 5, passive ability Guardian, this is a very popular passive ability, and finally, melee and missile weapon damage plus 1% for blessed units, own armies faction-wide. You can tell that there's a lot of that type of bonus, and yeah, like you're gonna get very powerful, especially with Guardian. Guardian is a very good buff. Kroq-Gar will also have access to a very powerful skill at rank 40 known as the Last Defender, which has the following benefits: upkeep minus 10 for all units, own armies when in enemy territory, attribute Strider, own armies faction-wide, charge bonus plus 2 per rank achieved, own armies faction-wide, alignments gained from battles plus 10%, Global recruitment duration minus 2 turns for Bastiladons, Stegodons, Feral Carnosaurs, Feral Troglodyons, Ancient Salamanders and Dread Saurian units to the minimum of 1 turn for faction-wide. Recruitment duration minus 1 turn for Bastiladons, Stegodons, Feral Carnosaurs, Feral Troglodons, Ancient Salamanders and Dread Saurian units for all provinces. And finally, enables recruitment for the Gargantulan unit from the Giant Beast building. Now, before we check that unit out, you can see that the bonuses here are absolutely great, and this is obviously to keep you as aggressive as possible, especially the global recruitment duration reduction. And on screen right now, you can see the special unit, which is, well, pretty much the Total War Warhammer's version of the Indomitus Rex. It's a big beastie that's got a lot of HP, it can do a lot of damage, it's also incredibly fast too. I mean, why wouldn't you want such a big monster in your armies? First, let's look at the faction traits for Oxyotl, where we have 2. The first is Lord of the Solar City, which has the following bonuses. Diplomatic relations minus 25 with most factions. Winds of Magic, starting amount plus 25, construction cost minus 50% for Star Chamber buildings, right cost minus 50%, and magic resistance plus 2% per rank achieved. Now you might remember that the Lizardmen will now have a new resource known as alignment. Well, Mazdamundi takes it a step further where he will also get benefits from said alignment, and it will continue to scale with as much as he gets. You can only have a maximum of 100, but that means that there's a decent amount of bonuses from that. Given that Mazdamundi has 50 at the very start of your campaign, let's check out what bonuses you'll get. For 50 to 59 alignment, you will get the following benefits. Magic item drop chance plus 50%, which also increases. Research rate plus 50%, increasing. Magic resistance plus 15% for bless units, increasing. Cooldown minus 12.5% for ruination of cities. Number of uses plus 1 for ruination of cities, and army ability Geomantic Guardians, which allows you to summon in a unit of Temple Guard. So the first 4 benefits, those that have increasing onto them, will get better or weaker with the amount of alignment you have. The less that you have, the worse it will be, but the more you have, the more powerful it will be, and, well, research is actually quite important when it comes to the new Lizardman playstyle, so you'll be able to benefit with this very heavily if you're playing as Mazdamundi. Mazdamundi's own personal trait, Venerated, has the following effects. Miscast base chance minus 10%, unit experience gain per turn plus 50 for Lord's Army, Winds of Magic power reserve plus 10, Winds of Magic cost minus 10% for all spells, upkeep minus 25% for Temple Guards, this is of course in Lord's Army, armor plus 10 for Temple Guard units, Lord's Army, and the ability Bolt of the Old Ones, which will be usable by all the Slann. He will also benefit from his own unique skill line, which will focus around doing damage with some very powerful spells, but also have some buffs to his own army and a few debuffs to the enemy. One such spell you'll want to get your hands on is Ruination of Cities, as it is very powerful and can do a lot of damage to the enemy. Plus, the bonus towards range and missile damage for Bastiladons and Stegodons is extremely tasty, especially if you want a full doom stack of Stegodons and Bastiladons. Not only that, but if you can level him up to level 40, he'll be able to get a very powerful skill known as Lord of the Solar City, which has the following bonuses. Fire resistance 10% for own armies faction-wide, recruit rank plus 5 for Temple Guard units own armies faction-wide, ability Blessing of Oxyotl for own armies faction-wide. This is a rather powerful explosion, as you can see, all the stats are listed below. Upkeep minus 25% for all Slann, casualty replenishment rate plus 100% for Temple Guard units for own armies faction-wide, and finally alignments generated plus 2 per turn, so you'll be able to get bonuses far quicker and also be able to use your special mechanic, which we'll talk about shortly. Your new mechanic Star Reading is completely unique to Mazdamundi, and it can be found at the bottom right hand corner of your game. This is completely dependent on how much alignment you have, and it will trigger various different events which will allow you to get different bonuses. The more alignment, the better the bonus, and as long as you have alignment, you can trigger this as many times as possible. At the beginning, you'll be able to pick from battles, economy, or campaign bonuses. It's really completely up to you. Picking any of those options will lead to further options. For example, I picked battles, and then picking an even further option, well, there's where you can find the possible buffs. Here you can see I can now pick from 3 different buffs, and they cost different amounts of alignment. They're around 25 turns long, and then really here it depends on the following factors: how much alignment you have and what exact bonus you're looking for. There's so many different choices that you can practically find anything that you'll actually need, and if you don't want anything, all you have to do is just click the do nothing section and you'll close down the window without wasting any bit of your alignment. Again, as I said before, as long as you still have alignment, you can keep opening and closing this tab as much as you want, so you're free to explore or go about to just find something in specific if you made some mistake. Don't you worry, it's not that punishing. Now, you might remember in the previous video that the Slann have gotten a major buff, becoming very powerful and much more representative of how they are in the lore. Well, they get a little bit stronger if you're playing as Mazdamundi's base faction. Learning directly from Mazdamundi themselves, they have a bunch of extra skills, so let's check them out. The Slann Mage Priest of Fire will have 6 new unique skills. One, of course, focusing around fire resistance, and then starting to change a little bit, focusing around buffing up your monsters to be able to do a lot more damage. This is normally anything that is related to fire or is able to fire some ammunition, reducing their recruitment cost and vigor loss reduction too, and also reducing the range and armor of enemies within the region, so you'll be able to hit them hard and hit them fast. The Fire Slann themselves are very good to be geared for sieges, especially when attacking and holding out to starve out the enemy, so perhaps this is something that you want when you start invading the old world. The Slann Mage Priest of Light has a number of benefits too, being able to increase the leadership aura size of all characters, also reducing the upkeep for the Skinks and Kroq-Gar units quite heavily, with also increasing their recruit rank, also being able to increase the missile resistance for 25% for Skinks, Chameleon Skinks, Red Crested Skinks, Kroq-Gars, and Sacred Kroq-Gar units. By far, one of the greatest benefits is one specific bonus that you get at the end of this skill line, which reduces the construction time minus 100% for settlement buildings in the local province. If you're able to get this, then it's best to send this character into territories where the climate might not be in your favor. The Slann Mage Priest of High Magic is able to increase your research rate by 10%, which is very beneficial once again if you recall all the research that you need to do and all the benefits that you can already get already. This is just further fuel for the fire. You'll also be able to increase the capabilities of your Temple Guard and Saurus, either recruit rank, weapon strength, or even focusing around melee defense and casualty replenishment. They'll be able to be your main standing army, and it makes sense to be able to have a lot of Temple Guard protecting your Slann. You'll also be able to increase campaign movement range plus 5% for armies, all armies faction-wide, which is a rather good bonus if you can get a lot of these Slann Mage Priests up and running. Keep in mind, however, that of course this takes 40 turns, so you might not be able to get that many. And finally, the Slann Mage Priest of Life, which is of course focusing around healing, but also very good bonuses for Bastiladons, Stegodons, Carnosaurs, Troglodons, Ancient Salamanders, and Dread Saurians, increasing their speed, their armor, their weapon strength, and missile strength too. You're able to do quite a lot of damage with these, and you can pretty much get a nice doom stack with these guys as they buff up quite nicely. You'll also be able to increase your ambush defense chance plus 5% own armies faction-wide, but if you're coming up with a lot of Carnosaurs, I don't think you'll want to hide. This is completely up to you, but that will also benefit your Skink armies that you might be using to pick off some enemy armies around the area. Gor-Rok's faction trait, the Great White Lizard, has the following benefits. Saurus have increased melee defense when below 50% HP. Rite of Resilience, Unbreakable, and defense bonuses for Saurus. Starts with control of Lord Kroq that have extended skills tree and unique dilemmas. Upkeep minus 10% for Saurus units, and alignment generated plus 1 per turn. Gor-Rok's own personal trait, Protector of Itza, has the following benefits. Melee defense plus 8 when in own or friendly territory for Lord's army, and physical resistance plus 20% when defending sieges, own armies and province. You would also have noticed weapon strength plus 10 for Saurus units in Lord's army, but that is actually a skill which is active at the beginning of your game. Lord Kroq's own personal trait, the Spirit of the Venerable Lord Kroq, has the following benefits: growth plus 20, own local province, leadership plus 5, own armies in province, and untainted plus 5, local province. You might see a lot of different effects on campaign effects and battle effects, but don't worry about that, we'll discuss that soon. Alignment will of course be as important as ever with this newest update, and for Gor-Rok you mostly get it through character skills alongside the usual geomantic web and events. And not only is it gained through skills, but also used on skills too. Alignment will also have a large variety of buffs, as you can see over here in this new alignment section. For every 10 alignment that you get, Lord Kroq and your faction becomes more powerful. You start with 50 baseline, which gives you no benefits as you can see here, and as you progress you'll get more, but as you lose alignment you will also start to suffer negatives. You can see here that it won't take too long to start getting some benefits, as here with 60 to 69 you have the following bonuses: construction cost -5 for province, capital and settlement buildings, all resistances plus 5% for Lord Kroq, speed plus 5% for Lord Kroq, casualty replenishment plus 5 for Lord Kroq, upkeep -5% for Lord Kroq, and winds of magic cost -1 for deliverance of insta spells. It's already showing to be quite powerful, and let's just skip on ahead to showcase some stronger benefits that you can get. Whereas at 80 to 89 alignment you had the following benefits: construction cost -15% for province, capital and settlement buildings, all resistances plus 15% for Lord Kroq, speed plus 15% for Lord Kroq, casualty replenishment plus 15% for Lord Kroq, upkeep -15% for Lord Kroq, and winds of magic cost -3 for deliverance of insta spells. There's a heavy focus on Lord Kroq, and there's a good reason for it. You see, at the beginning of your campaign you will be faced with a rather powerful dilemma, a 50-turn dilemma which can give you a strong benefit for rather strong choices to be in fact, but also be faced with casualty replenishment of -25% for Lord Kroq. Now the reason because of this is because Lord Kroq for Gor-Rok's campaign specifically is incredibly powerful, much more so than he ever was in vanilla, so you'll want to keep him alive, and this is the thing, with lower casualty replenishment he can easily die, and you want him to keep leveling up. This dilemma will then repeat itself after 50 turns, and then the negative will no longer be there, but the first 50 turns are rather important. That's because Lord Kroq now has a massive new skill tree, which, yeah, I mean you can see it right now, it's absolutely huge, with loads of different benefits that can affect himself and your faction as a whole. This is something that you need to explore and go through as much as possible, and obviously the first 50 turns for your campaign, if you can keep Kroq alive you will get a lot of benefits very early on. We won't go throughout the whole tree itself because, yeah, I mean it's absolutely massive, but now you know that there's a lot of different things that you can go through, and I would suggest trying out this campaign when you can, as it radically changes up the Lizardmen with a separate technology tab in a sense, just with instant tech, and obviously focused around levels than actual research time too. There are some powerful skills as you can see on screen right now with the final design, only available at rank 40, which increases physical resistance when you're under siege, reduces construction cost by 100% for all landmark buildings in all regions, and of course gives you a little bit more of alignment per turn. This is one thing that you'll want to go for as fast as possible, and like I said, keep Lord Kroq alive for the first 50 turns and try and level him up as much as possible, especially since you start with Gor-Rok and Gor-Rok himself is quite powerful. It shouldn't really be too much of an issue to keep him alive. Gor-Rok's unique right to the Right of Resilience has also been updated. Recruit rank +5 for Saurus Scar veterans, attribute Unbreakable for Saurus Scar veterans and Temple Guard units, attribute Expert Charge Defense for Saurus and Temple Guard units, and ability Pursuit of Battle for Saurus and Temple Guard units. And finally, the Saurus Old Bloods, which are linked up to Gor-Rok's faction, will have access to new skills in a very similar sense to a title system. Each Saurus Old Blood may only pick one title, and the titles themselves have their own level system with up to 3 levels. These titles themselves will provide massive benefits, and you can see that there's also some faction-wide benefits too, so you're going to want to focus around Sauruses more than anything else, and you can do a lot of damage through this, where the Old Bloods themselves will be absolutely powerful, though keep in mind that you will also spend alignment per turn, and obviously this is something that you'll need to keep an eye on, as Lord Kroq is very heavily dependent on alignment too. It's pretty much make a choice here. Tehenhauin's Sacrifices to Sotek mechanic has been rebalanced. Now a lot of these will provide much better benefits, and you'll be able to get more alignments from it too, as obviously alignment is a big feature for the Lizardmen through this patch. The basic framework is still the same, so you'll still have to sort out sacrifices and going by the faction specific questline, but now you'll feel like you're progressing through more and getting a lot more bonuses towards your faction as a whole. Tehenhauin will also have access to 2 new technology branches split up by 4 technologies per branch. The first branch itself, the one at the very top, is focused around economy. Whether it is saving you some coin or getting you some more coin, it's something which is quite important, especially for Lizardmen factions as you build more and more armies. Keep in mind that each of these technologies do have a high cost of alignment, so you're not going to be getting them that quickly. The second branch itself, that at the very bottom, will focus around skink warfare. With these 4 techs, you'll be able to boost up the capabilities of your skink lord and heroes, so you can actually have more a thematic style of play and bring them more up to par with the Saurus lords and heroes, so that way you can keep just using skinks all the time. Once again, it's going to cost a decent amount of alignment, so you're not going to be getting these very early on your campaign. Tehenhauin's own special unique building tree, which leads to the floating pyramid, is a must-have during his campaigns, as it provides the following benefits. Sacrificial offerings generated plus 10 per turn, public order plus 5 for every concurrent war with a neighbouring faction, public order plus 5, casualties captured post-battle plus 5% own armies faction-wide, that's a very good bonus. Casualty replenishment rate plus 10% own armies in province, and melee and missile weapon damage plus 10% own armies in province. As you can see, this building is extremely lucrative for Tehenhauin's faction, as you'll be getting sacrificial offerings generated per turn, and you can have multiple of this building throughout different provinces, and the public order bonuses are also quite good, since this does help out a lot with keeping your provinces stable. The fact that it has 5 different tiers and you'll be getting more and more bonuses makes sure that it becomes relevant throughout your whole campaign. Oxyotl in the Mortal Empires campaign will have access to a rather expensive technology known as Darkness Vanquished. These are the benefits that you'll acquire in the Eye of the Vortex campaign, but now able to acquire them in Mortal Empires 2, and the bonuses are as follows. Ward save 10% when fighting against Warriors of Chaos, Norska and Beastmen. Untainted plus 2 all regions. Global recruitment capacity plus 5. No recruitment costs for Chameleon Skinks and Chameleon Skink Stalker units. And finally, ward save plus 10 when in foreign territory. This will of course cost a lot of alignment too. It's not too difficult to get alignment as Oxyotl, as it's mostly tied to your sanctums. However, your sanctums have been changed a little bit. They will cost more to be able to build them up, as in vanilla they were very easy to get a lot of them up and running. However, the benefit here is that all of your buildings tied to your sanctums will be able to increase the rate at which you gain more alignment, so you have incentive to use them and build them up. There has been a rather big change when it comes to the Visions of the Old Ones mechanic. Now the benefits themselves are much more lucrative, able to have very powerful faction-wide bonuses for a certain amount of time. However, the negatives also have received some power buffs. This is so the player has to realize which one they want to go for or not, and some of them can be quite detrimental to your campaign. One of the negatives, which I've seen show up fairly often, is that if you completely ignore this event, or if you fail, it makes it faster for the Chaos Invasion to actually happen. Now, this might not seem so bad when it comes to vanilla, but when it comes to SFO, where there is obviously a stronger Chaos Invasion, melee units are a lot stronger too, and so on, you could get caught out here. You obviously do not want the Chaos Invasion to trigger very early on, especially since you're up in the frozen north, where a large amount of Chaos Warriors will spawn. It does make it more interesting, and it will make you more on edge to want to actually finish off all these visions of the old ones, and keep in mind that this is not vanilla, where early on you won't be able to have two armies max stacked as Oxyotl is moving around and doing his thing. Oxyotl's faction trait, the Returned, has also been changed, which offers now the following benefits: suitable climates, all. Silent Sanctums, we already know about those, and same as the visions of the old ones. Additional +1 melee attack, melee defense, and leadership per experience rank for all skink infantry. Additional +1 speed and missile damage per experience for all skink infantry, immune to chaos attrition, and upkeep reduction -10% for lords and heroes. This removes the rather strong upkeep reduction of the skink units, as it was a bit too powerful in vanilla when adding in everything else into effect. And finally, all generic lords for Oxyotl's faction, barring that of the Slann, will have access to a small new tree which focuses around bringing new banners in for the said character. It's kind of like bringing in a battle standard bearer in a sense, but for a lord character, and you'll also be able to get a rather decently stacking faction-wide bonus. Now, this is only with the Saurus Old Blood, and what you do have to keep in mind is that when the banner is active, so this is the other free skills, it will cost 1 alignment per turn, which can be rather costly when it comes to your alignments, so you're going to have to build up your sanctums and build them up fully with the upgrades and so on to be able to negate this negative. Tiktaq'to's unique faction trait, Master of Skies, has the following benefits. Rite of Zunki resets all the campaign movement range of all armies and characters when performed. Skink heroes start with a Pterodon mount, campaign line of sight plus 25%, Pterodons gain a unique battle ability which can be listed below, and finally a unique unit only available to Tiktaq'to, the Ancient Ripperdactyl. The Ancient Ripperdactyl can be seen on screen right now, a single entity, powerful flying monster with armor-piercing melee damage. It's also anti-large and has Vanguard deployment, paired with the fact that it's also Ripperdactyl, which means it's able to do damage quite quickly, and with 110 speed, this will soar across the battlefield without too much of a problem. Tiktaq'to's very own unique trait is the Eye in the Heavens, and has the following benefits. Upkeep -25% for Pterodon riders, Ripperdactyl riders, and Kotal units in his own army. Melee attack +10 when in foreign territory in Lord's army, and missile damage +100% for skink cohort javelin units in Lord's army. Tiktaq'to's very own unique trait is the Eye in the Heavens, and has the following benefits. Upkeep -25% for Pterodon riders, Ripperdactyl riders, and Kotal units in his own army. Melee attack +10 when in foreign territory in Lord's army, and missile damage +100% for skink cohort javelin units in Lord's army. One of Tiktaq'to's unique items, the Mark of Heavens, will also bestow upon a number of benefits, including missile resistance +10% for Pterodon riders, Ripperdactyl riders, and Kotal units for all armies faction-wide. If you're looking to have a more thematic approach and just go full Royal Lizardmen Air Force, you're able to do so, especially with bonuses such as this. As you are focusing around aerial combat with Tiktaq'to, he's also got access to 4 unique technologies which will help him in the battlefield. They will have a different amount of effects, whereas, say for example, one of them will focus around reducing enemy missile weapon range by 25% during battles. Another will focus around all enemy unit speed during battles by 15%. The third itself will focus around all enemies having their armor lowered by 5 during battles, and the last one will reduce the enemy melee weapon damage by 10% during battles. This is very beneficial if you're going to be using stuff like Pterodons and Ripperdactyls, as yes, they're perfectly able to do some damage, especially when flanking or going through the rear, but when it comes to them getting caught in melee combat, that's where those units will begin to fail and take a lot of damage. So with these technologies, you'll be able to bring bring some debuffs to your enemies, but also make your pterodons and your ripidactyls much more deadlier. Tic-Tac-Toe gains alignment, the new resource for the Great Plan patch, via mostly through battles. Now, considering that your campaigns will take you to an area where you're going to be dealing with a lot of potential enemies, you're not going to have too much of a problem gaining alignment itself. Tic-Tac-Toe uses alignment on two specific things. One is a set of buildings and the other is for a new mechanic. The mechanic itself can be found in the right hand side of your game screen, and this will work in a series of dilemmas. What you can do here is spend a certain amount of alignment, as you can see, and gain some certain buffs in the form of mastery. Here you've got the mastery of stealth, mastery of refill, and mastery of ripidactyls. The buffs themselves are fairly powerful, and really it depends on what the player wants from them. 75 alignment won't take too long at the beginning, however it will take a little longer in the future, so keep in mind that this resource is something that you're going to be sinking a lot of alignment on. So here I would advise to think quite hard before you start spending such a big pool of the resource, especially since now we're going to have to start looking towards the special buildings. The special buildings themselves are known as lookouts, and they can only be constructed in major settlements. There are 4 different types and will require a tier 3 settlement. Each of them have their own specific bonuses, which can vary from armies and province to own armies faction-wide, and it is quite a powerful bonus. All 4 of them are very stylized for different types of play too, so again this focuses around player choice and really what suits your needs the best. Keep in mind that these buildings also require 1 alignment per turn per building, so if you're going to be building these up quite often, you're going to have to keep a steady flow of alignment coming in, or else you will not be able to benefit from other mechanics, though you should be fine if you keep being aggressive, and Tic-Tac-Toe's faction should be played in an aggressive way. Tic-Tac-Toe will also have a rather powerful skill available to be unlocked at rank 40, which is known as Eye of the Heavens and has the following benefits. Number of uses +1 for masteries of Laqua army abilities all armies, range +25% for own armies faction-wide, income from sacking settlements +25% for all characters, perfect vigor all characters, speed +2 per rank achieved own armies faction-wide, and alignments gained from battles +10%. Given those benefits, keeping Tic-Tac-Toe in the front line and getting into as many battles as possible is likely to be very beneficial here. Nakai's special faction trait is known as the Wanderer, which has the following benefits. Nakai's horde unlocks units while other hordes use global recruitment to get access to them. Nakai's vassals occupy the settlements conquered. The more settlements controlled come with increasing rewards. Recruit rank +5 for Kroq-Gar Ancients, and ambush defense chance +25%. How a Kroq-Gar of that size is able to ambush anyone is beyond me, but hey, that's actually legitimate lore, so yeah. Nakai's own unique personal trait First Spawn has the following benefits. Melee defense +10 for Kroq-Gar and Sacred Kroq-Gar units for Lord's Army. Recruitment cost -50% for Kroq-Gar and Sacred Kroq-Gar units for Lord's Army. And finally, unit experience gain per turn +100 for all armies faction-wide. Of course, it's a very good bonus, especially once you start the ball rolling with making more and more armies. So of course, Nakai has its own unique Horde-inspired technology tree, and that has actually stayed very much the same. However, a new branch has been added in specifically for the Great Plan patch. A grand majority of these new technologies focus around Nakai himself, further empowering him and making him an absolute apex predator, with loads of buffs and some really thematic stuff to make him appear in defense in other battles. Think of him as the Green Knight, but how the Green Knight should have actually been implemented in vanilla. There's also some other stuff which focuses around boosting up the capabilities of Kroq-Gars too. Keep in mind that with this specific technology tree, you're going to also need alignment resource. One thing to increase Nakai's quality of life is able to use its own version of the Underway. This is very good, especially for the Mortal Empires campaign, as you start off in Albion and then you have to traverse through Norsca, which is loads of mountainous terrain. It's also very useful in the Eye of the Vortex, as Lost Austria also suffers from the same terrain issues as Norska does, and let's be very honest, it's something that kind of puts you back from a Horde faction that doesn't really get to build. You're going to be stuck moving around a lot, and that terrain does become a bit of an issue. There are different ways of gaining the alignment resource, which is going to be very much needed throughout your campaign. One common way of getting it is actually by building up your hordes. The main building of your horde tree will be able to give you a steady amount of alignment as you progress through your campaign, with the final building giving you 5 alignment per turn. 5 alignment per turn is pretty steady and more or less online with every single Lizardmen faction with their own unique alignment mechanics. Another way to gain a decent amount of alignment per turn is by attacking settlements, and then turning these settlements into temples. Each temple will provide you with 1 alignment per turn, so you've got a decent amount of ways to actually gain this resource, and it's not going to take too long considering that Nakai is quite an aggressive faction by nature. One thing that you'll also notice is that the defenders of the Great Plan, aka your vassals, are completely sentient. This is something which is desperately needed, especially for this faction, as you can't be affording to play babysitter all the time with Nakai or any of your other forces, and let's be very honest, in general sense, a vassal doesn't really do much. They generally declare war on the enemies that you have, and won't really act by themselves. Keep in mind, however, that you might need to keep an eye on them if you declare war on a big faction, as there are some cases that they will be attacked and they won't be able to defend themselves. This depends obviously on how much cash they have to be able to build further armies, and you will need to be able to supply them sometimes. Something that I've noted, at least from my playthroughs, is that the enemy factions will also directly aim for them if they can too, as a vassal faction is usually a little weaker than the player faction anyway, so they will need to be defended ever so slightly every now and then if they can't build up their armies. The temples of the old ones have been changed in terms of buffs. The green line itself will focus around different administrative stuff, with the bonuses being as follows: campaign movement range plus 20% for armies, protection of Quetzal ability upgraded, constant casualty replenishment plus 10%, horde growth plus 5, and income from post-battle loot plus 25%. The red temples, Itzel, now has the following bonuses: Beasts of Itzel ability upgraded, melee defense plus 5, vigor loss reduction minus 20%, recruitment rank plus 2 for all units, and melee and missile weapon damage plus 10%. This is the one that I went for personally, as I was in a lot of fights constantly throughout Norska, and I wanted that little bit of an extra edge. And finally, the blue temples are focused around magic, and the following bonuses can be acquired: magic item drop chance plus 50%, winds of magic power reserve plus 25, magic resistance 10% for all units, Storm of Halanka ability upgraded, which obviously is a rather powerful vortex. And finally, Winds of Magic cost minus 20% for Law of Life, Heavens, Fire, Light, Beast, and High Magic. This obviously favors a lot of people who prefer magic, and is incredibly useful, especially with that Winds of Magic cost reduction, but it very much depends on your playstyle. I myself prefer the red one, and then I'd started going around from both, it just really depends. Of course, each of the different temples will also have different bonuses, different units, and so on that you can acquire, so it's very much dependent on your playstyle. That of course is tied to another resource which you'll naturally gain through your campaign, but that's gained in the same manner as the vanilla playthrough, so don't you worry about that, nothing is radically changing over there. The Beastmen Zangors have received a visual update alongside all the other Beastmen, but let's look at this one first. So now they've got beaks, they're more Zinchian, it's just more thematic and actual with the lore. They're actually quite powerful, as you can see. With 175 range, they're able to do damage from quite far away, especially if you want more ranged and skirmishing builds. The Slaneshi Slangors have also received quite an update. With armor-piercing melee damage, vanguard deployment, and stalk, they can move around the battlefield fairly quickly and ambush enemy opponents. They're actually quite good for what they do, and I've been using them a lot recently. The Pestigors really have that Nurgle look to them now, and they are extremely tanky. With poison attacks, the defender trait, resilience, and regeneration have them hold down a choke point and watch them as they can just take punishment after punishment without really losing too many of their numbers. And finally the Khorne Gors, very much ready to claim skulls in the name of the Blood God. Anti-infantry, melee experts, juggernauts and aerial attacks. These are a absolute blender unit, very capable of just ripping apart enemy lines and not really having to worry too much about them. Just throw them into the enemy and don't worry about them too much, as this is what they do best. You'll be able to unlock your God Touch scores by going through your technology tab. You can see here that 8 new technologies have been added in, and they're all linked towards your God Touch scores. 2 for Khorne, 2 for Nurgle, 2 for Slaanesh, and 2 for Tzeentch. Don't worry about the further stuff in the bottom, we'll be talking about that soon, but as you can see here, the first of each respective one will allow you to expand your secondary buildings in the garrison, and you'll be able to start unlocking recruitment for your Pestigors, Zangors, and so on. The second for each officially tied one is to boost up the capabilities of said God Touch score, so you'll be able to make them a little stronger in the battlefield, but it will also reduce the completion rate for your technology, so keep that in mind and try not to get yourself down to a very low research rate very early on. Now you'll see that you'll require a tier 3 Hearthstone to be able to get these God Touch cores and then build up their respective buildings, as they've been split up between each of the 4 buildable slots. So this means that you're going to have to pick and choose as you build up your Hearthstones. Each of the Hearthstones have also received some little updates here and there to balance them out, as it felt like some of them were just stronger than others, and obviously you would be going for the meta. They are all still fairly powerful, however, as to not take away from the massive Beastmen update that has recently arrived and keep them at a level playing field. Khazrak's faction effects, the Scourge of the Drakwold, has been updated accordingly. Dread cost minus 20% for all unit capacity upgrades. Khazrak's faction can recruit units globally, evasion chance when using the beast path plus 10%, ambush success chance plus 10%, and a unique unit, the Mutated Warhound. The Mutated Warhound is of course in reference to the fact that Khazrak is very fond of Chaos Warhounds, and it is fairly powerful, as you can see on screen. All its stats are listed there. A legendary unit, a duelist, fast attacks and capable, with 100 speed and a high charge bonus. It can move around the battlefield without too much of an issue and just demolish anything it comes into contact with. This is perfect for flanking your enemies or picking out, of course, any different types of war machines that may be straggling. The Warhound itself can be recruited from a special encampment building only available to Khazrak, which in its final form has the following bonuses. Dread cost minus 10 for all unit capacity upgrades, ambush success chance plus 20% for own armies and province, leadership aura size plus 100% when attacking own armies and province, and finally income from all horde buildings plus 40% own armies faction-wide. Khazrak will also have access to a bunch of different technologies which are linked to the 3rd level of a Beastmen Hearthstone. These are varied and you need to think about exactly what you want to build. They'll provide loads of bonuses for practically loads of different things. The only difference is that they are grouped up. So as you can see, there's a lot of different groups and they're divided into groups of 2. You can only pick one, and each of them will vary in terms of different bonuses. It very much depends on the player's playstyle and what exactly they want from that, but this will make Khazrak a lot more powerful. Malagor's faction effects, the Path of the Crowfather, has also been changed with the following effects. Dread cost minus 50% for all hero capacity upgrades. When normally killed in battle, your lords would be wounded instead. Unique Winds of Magic army abilities in Technology Tree, and Prophecy Dilemma every 30 turns. Horde Growth plus 4, and finally Recruit Rank plus 5 for Bray Shaman and Great Bray Shamans. Malagor will also have access to a unique building only available to his horde, which in its final level has the following effects. Miscast base chance minus 10% for all armies faction-wide. Campaign movement range plus 20% own armies and province. Melee defense plus 8 when defending own armies and province. Speed plus 20% for all units own armies in province. And finally, Horde growth plus 8 own armies in province. Malagorn's faction will also have access to a unique skill branch, which is more focused around using the more destructive winds of magic in an effort to make this faction much more spellcaster focused as it should be. These themselves are very powerful army abilities, and it also links up to a powerful buff known as Smother Their Hope, which has a lot of bonuses. All enemies have lowered melee weapon damage by 10% during battles, enemy siege holdout time -5, recruit rank +5 for Bray Shamans and Great Bray Shamans, the passive ability known as Totem of Rust for all characters which reduces enemy armor, and finally melee attack +10 for Regiment of Renown units. Morga the Shadowgate will also have access to his own unique technology branch, a rather expensive one as you can see here, but very worth it as the bonuses themselves are extremely powerful and will make his faction very dangerous, especially throughout the ruins of the old world. Morga still needed a bit of quality of life changes to make him a bit more terrifying, and he's definitely more dangerous now. However, of course it will cost a decent amount of your treasury, so you're going to have to start raiding as much as possible and start making that bank. Morga will also have access to his own unique building for his horde, which when fully upgraded has the following benefits: income from raising settlements plus 20% for own armies faction wide, casualty replenishment plus 40% for own armies in province, attrition plus 60% when under siege, enemy armies in region, melee attack plus 8 during forest battles, own army in province, and of course he will have access to wild dragon ogres. In fact, Morga's faction is the only one that will have access to wild dragon ogres now out of all the Beastmen. Taurox will not get a lot of changes, but he will be able to teleport at the beginning of the campaign, very much like every single other Beastmen legendary lord. So you can start in the Northern Old World, you can start in Southern Araby, Western Lustria, or remain where the vanilla baseline start is. That's pretty much it in terms of Taurox, barring some minor balancing here and there, but this is the Beastmen now getting a further update alongside the recent official rework. A quick note for all those not aware, the Warriors of Chaos are unfortunately a race which has all the legendary lords in one faction, meaning that it's all in one start location. However, SFO Grimhammer has a different take on that subject, where you'll be able to teleport your starting army to a different location. You'll be presented with 4 options at the beginning of your campaign: Northern Ulthuan, Southern Araby, Western Lustria, or remaining in the Chaos Wastes. Whichever you choose will also grant you a faction-wide bonus which will remain with you until the end of your campaign. Archaon's faction effect, Ever Chosen, has the following benefits: units gain plus 2% weapon and missile strength per rank achieved. Unlocks hero recruitment Exalted Hero. Chaos sacrifices cost minus 25% of base value. Physical resistance 10% for Chaos Knights units. Melee attack and leadership plus 10 for Chaos Cultist units, and can raise Chaos Fortresses in every major settlement. More on that a little later. Archaon's own unique trait, Vessel, has the following benefits: ward save 5% for all units in Lord's army. Income from raising settlements plus 10% for all characters, upkeep minus 10% for Chaos Knights units in all armies faction-wide, and finally the Swords of Chaos, Chaos Knights Regiments of Renown, serve Archaon completely for free whilst in his own army. Korlek's own faction trait, Herald of the Tempest, has the following benefits: Korlek can recruit up to 10 Bestigor units, enemy siege holdout time -2, global recruitment duration -2 turns for all units, melee attack plus 5 when laying siege, removes charge defense versus large from all enemy units, and finally can raise Chaos Fortresses in every major settlement. Kolek's own unique trait, Mountain God, has the following benefits: upkeep minus 25% for Dragon Ogre units in Lord's army, melee attack plus 10 for Dragon Ogre Shaggoth units in Lord's army, melee attack plus 10 for regular Dragon Ogre units in Lord's army. Summoners of Rage, Dragon Ogre Regiments of Renown, serve Korlek completely for free whilst in his army, and unit capacity plus 2 for Dragon Ogre and Dragon Ogre Shaggoth units. Sigvald's faction trait, Scion of Sinesh, has the following benefits: Marauder units gain the Rage passive ability, which further upgrades to Berserk at rank 7 and above. Demonettes of Sinesh summons in battle. Yes, you can summon Demonettes directly into the battlefield. Dark Devotion gained from battles plus 10%. Hero self-defense chance plus 25% of wounding aggressors, tribute from vassals plus 25%, and finally can raise Chaos Fortresses in every major settlement. Whereas Sigvald's own trait, Supreme Vanity, has the following benefits: speed plus 10 for infantry units in Lord's army, horde growth plus 5 for Lord's army, upkeep minus 25% for Marauder units in his own army, attribute Strider for Lord's army, and finally the Mirror Guard Chaos Warriors Regiments of Renown serve Sigvald completely for free whilst in his army. Your Chaos Lords will be able to build up war shrines dedicated to one of their chosen Chaos Gods. Being able to do so will grant various different benefits and also allow you to recruit new units. These are God-touched and highly elite warriors. Now, it is important to note that you can only build up one shrine per army, so you can't have all four. The units themselves, as expected, are heavily stylized with their dedication to their specific Chaos God, and they will fulfill battlefield roles as expected from them in the lore, so not only will they look the part, but also feel the part too. First up, we have the Zealots of Change, and they are of course Tzeentchian warriors. Now, stat-wise they might not look so good, but then again you can't expect them to be very powerful. The thing is, however, that they do have access to some bound spells, and even are able to summon in Chaos Spawn. The Sons of the Last Plague are of course dedicated to Nurgle, great weapon wielding and very heavily armoured with Juggernaut, area of attacks and regeneration. These are the embodiment of Nurgle's fist, when he can be bothered to raise his arm. With 15,000 HP, they can take a lot of punishment and still keep on fighting. The Guardians of the Dark Prince's Desires are of course dedicated to Slaanesh. These are more mid-tier when it comes to stats. However, they have armor-piercing melee damage, vanguard deployment, perfect vigor, and a high resilience. They'll be able to pin down enemies and rip apart any heavily armored warriors, which of course works very well if you decide to fight against your other Norscan tribes in an effort to subjugate them. And finally, we have the Chosen Khorne Berserkers, anti-infantry, unbreakable, fast attacks, glass cannon, and dual-wielding units. These are your absolute blenders. Throw them into anything that's heavily armoured, or pretty much just throw them in front of anything. Hordes of Skaven, Bretonnian peasants, or anything on foot. These units will make quick work of them. Kholek will be able to recruit the Bestigors from their own specific building, and you'll be able to upgrade their weapon strength, speed, and also make them unbreakable. The Warriors of Chaos have had a stylized technology tab for a while, where you can choose to go undivided, or lock yourself to a specific Chaos God. This patch has rebalanced some of those technologies and added some new effects. We won't be here discussing it all, as obviously we'd be here for an entire day, but it's just brought up to standard now to the newest SFO patches. The Warriors of Chaos will also now have access to a new resource known as Dark Devotion, which is gained from raising settlements, battles, events, and technology, and used in chaotic sacrifices. Those who have played the Beastmen prior to this SFO update will remember this mechanic very clearly. That itself will link up to a new tab for chaotic sacrifices. You'll have 4 different tabs, each of them stylized after a Chaos God, and you'll use your Dark Devotion resource specifically here. As you can see, you'll be able to get some buffs for your faction, but also be able to recruit minor demons. Bloodletters of Khorne will of course be available from that Khorne tab, and as you can see they've got some pretty powerful stats. Flame and magic attacks, anti-infantry, and unbreakable too. It won't take long for you to be able to unlock these, as obviously Dark Devotion is focused around battles, and these go directly to your Regiments of Renown pool, meaning that they can be recruited instantly. Demonettes of Slaanesh, obviously from the Slaanesh tab, with armor-piercing melee attacks, vanguard deployment, Unbreakable 2, and fast attacks. These are quite perfect if you want to build up a skirmish type of army. Plague Bearers of Nurgle, of course from the Nurgle tab, with armor-piercing melee damage, poison attacks, unbreakable, and regeneration. They've got very high health pools as it is, and regeneration will make sure that they keep there and doing as much damage as possible. And finally we have the Pink Horrors of Tzeentch from, of course, the Tzeentch tab. Now, these are a ranged units which are anti-infantry, split on death, and small splash. They're usually represented as a ranged unit pretty much through every single Warhammer game, so it makes sense to implement them the same way here. But let's look at the split on death. With Split on Death, SFO have been able to create a rather interesting mechanic, where a pink horror dies and splits into 2 blue horrors, which will then momentarily do damage before disappearing. The whole splitting situation is of course from the lore and the tabletop, where a pink horror will turn into 2 blue horrors. And finally, the Warriors of Chaos faction will now be able to settle on settlements, but only major provincial settlements. This is of course heavily inspired by the new Beastmen Herdstone mechanic, and it works in a very similar way too. However, there are some key differences where, of course, the settlement itself is built like a Chaos Fortress, meaning that you will get multiple different building options and much more than the Beastmen ever have. And you won't have a specific area for a blood ground, but rather just the immediate settlements next to your current fortress will not be able to be resettled. There are also a few special Chaos Fortresses littered around the map. I won't tell you which ones, but you can go and hunt them down for yourselves.
So I hope you like the full showcase and the little surprise with Chaos Warriors. This update will be released in several hours from the releasing of this video, so 8 PM Central European time on stream, and on stream we will have a little raffle with prizes and more information about the future. So let's see each other on the stream. Fenris out!